It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It means my level's really hot in this meter. Welcome to Taxi TV Live. All right. I am joined today by somebody who's been a close friend of mine. Do you know what, Tony? I was thinking about this. We've known each other for almost 30 years.
Maybe you've known me that long. I'm too young to know you 30 years.
Didn't we meet in the mid-90s?
Yeah, probably.
Anyway, I am so happy to have Tony here today. He is a very close friend of mine. He is the CEO of Disc Makers. At one point before they sold it, he was CEO of Disc Makers, CDBaby, just all kinds of stuff. One of the smartest business people I've ever met, a great advisor to me. And he brought something to my attention that I heard about, but I really didn't know much about. So if it's coming out of his mouth, I want to hear more about it. And that is how Spotify diverted $47 million away from indie artists' royalties. And he knows so much about it that I'm just going to say, lay it on us, and I'll interject when need be. Let me know when I should push up the slides and tell us why it's happening, how it's happening, and what can be done to prevent it from happening.
Yeah, Michael, thanks for having me. I've been, I do these videos every Saturday, every Friday on YouTube, what they call the Indie Music Minute videos, and maybe some of the folks watching here have seen them. And I touch on different topics, but one of the things, obviously, I'm in the disc business. We make CDs, we make vinyl records and DVDs, and you name it. But for 11 years, we also owned CDBaby, and so I was steeped pretty deep into in the digital distribution space. And one of the things that I've talked about for years since I started doing these videos is streaming pays so little that it's really kind of it's an unfair, from a financial perspective, it's an unfair setup for independent artists, because the bulk of the royalty payments go to, the proverbial top 1%. And 2 years ago, Spotify announced in 2023 that they were going to go to quote unquote artist-centric royalty payments. And what the artist-centric royalty payments were is that any song that did not have 1,000 streams in any particular year would not monetize. So if you had a song that had 998 streams, you would miss out on those royalties. Now on one song, on one track, it might not make a whole lot of difference, because at an average streaming royalty of 0.3 of a penny, one stream is 0.3 of a penny, and 1,000 streams is $3, right? It's no big deal. But there's so many emerging artists, so many independent artists, DIY artists, some of them trying to kind of get up from being unknown, some of them are weekend warriors, for lack of a more flattering term, and we have, they may have multiple albums, and all the albums they may have a couple of tracks that hit 1,000, but a bunch of tracks that don't, and in the aggregate, it adds up. And so 2024 was the first year where Spotify demonetized these sub 1,000 stream songs, and so I in one of my recent videos, I did the math. I went through Spotify's annual report. I calculated and estimated the streams, the royalties, the users, how many tracks were monetized and demonetized, and it was pretty startling. And we did this video, we did a blog post, and then Hypebot picked it up, and Digital Music News picked it up, and Spotify responded. And
Did they shoot out the windows at your house?
They tried, not this time. They tried to I don't know, whitewash, greenwash, whatever the wash is, to make themselves look good, and it's just it didn't make it any fairer, right? And the interesting thing is, like, and the math. Let me run through my math,
Okay.
so that folks who are on, you can kind of see how I got there. Then we can talk a little bit about kind of Spotify and their reaction, and kind of, and then we can take it from there. So put up, I have some slides just to kind of illustrate really how the Spotify royalty pyramid works, in terms of number of tracks that are streaming, etc. And then we'll kind of go into the math really quickly. There's a lot of math, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I'm going to spend zero time talking about the math.
I think I speak for my entire audience when I say none of us are math majors.
Yeah. Let's. Why don't you put the slides up?
Right.
It makes our handsome faces go away, I believe.
I could put the slides up in a small inset, but it's better to see them big. So here we go.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So
here
we go. So this handsome pyramid is the universe of all Spotify songs, and Spotify announced that they had, at the end of last year, 202.2 million songs, and probably some of yours are among those 202. It's a crazy, whopping amount, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked at, okay, according to Spotify's own stats, there were 33 songs last year with more than 1 billion streams. There were 492,000 songs, almost 500,000, that had between 1 million and 1 billion streams. That's 0.24% of total had over 1 million streams. There were 2.1 million to be exact. I don't want to misrepresent Spotify's stats, or 1% of their total tracks that had between 100,000 and 1 million streams. 24 million tracks had between 1,000 and 100,000 streams. So that's another 12%. So you're looking at the remaining tracks, all of which had less than 1,000 streams. 175.5 million of the 200 million tracks that did not monetize last year.
And so you would multiply
87%.
And you would multiply that times, what'd you say, 0.03?
0.03. So yeah. So I have a couple more stats, and then we'll get to the math. So
okay.
There were 35 million almost that had over 100 streams but less than 1,000. There were another 47 million that had 11 to 100, and then there were a whopping 93 million tracks that had virtually nothing, right? 0 to 10. So I basically took this. I'm like, okay, here are the tracks 0 to 10, 11 to 100, and 100 to 989, and then I do the math. How many tracks? How many streams per track? How many total streams? What's the average royalty, and what's the total royalty? And I'm going to spare you all the math, but if you look at the very bottom right, or look at the bottom row, there's 175 million tracks, on average 81 streams per track, 14 billion streams at a little over 0.3 of a penny. So that's almost 47 million in total royalties.
Wow.
So so what happened? What did Spotify do? You can put the
us
back. So Spotify didn't pocket that money, right? They are redistributing that 47 million to all the tracks that did exceed 1,000 streams, proportionate to their streams. So that's, it's Taylor Swift, it's Billie Eilish, it's Benson Boone, who I hadn't heard of before I saw him on the Grammys. was the biggest streaming track last year at 2.6 billion streams.
Crazy.
Crazy. So Benson Boone, Billie Eilish, Sabrina Carpenter, Shabuzi, Taylor Swift, they got your streams. If you had tracks that were demonetized, they got most of them. And of course, who really got most of them was the major labels, right? The major labels represent all these top artists, and so the monies went to the majors. So it didn't save Spotify any money. This was a campaign that the majors had. The majors came up with this term of, it's kind of Orwellian term, right, of artist-centric royalties, because they demonetized 83% of Spotify's artists, and and so it's really, centric to their artists.
It's almost a communistic model. It's like all the serfs are doing this work, but the money is filtering up to the elites. I mean, it's
yes, it's reverse Robin Hood.
Yeah. So how did the majors get Spotify to back it, basically by threatening, if you don't play ball with us and go with this model, which puts $47 million more in our collective pockets, that we're going to take the Taylor Swifts and all the big stars off of Spotify and you can go F yourself?
Probably. I don't have insight into, what they actually said, but the majors control really strong catalogs, obviously, right? And so if they threaten to withhold their catalogs, they'll have some clout. I don't know if they did that. Some of the majors, if not all, are still shareholders in Spotify as well. So, I felt the need to speak up about this. This has been in the news before, but this was the first time that anybody actually kind of ran the numbers. And the interesting thing is that, I've been hearing about this from artists. Artists think this is patently unfair. And again, per artist, we're not talking about big dollars.
Right.
But I think, if I'm an artist and I make, use my example, right? I had a little record label. I have my own band. I put out some other music. It's on CDBaby. Once a quarter, roughly, I get $100 from CDBaby, and so I have tracks that are over 1,000 streams, but I also have other tracks that don't get to 1,000, right? That $100 to me once a quarter or 3 times a year is much more impactful than spreading it out over Bad Bunny and Sabrina Carpenter and these artists, they won't even notice it. So
what percentage of every dollar that goes to the majors to be proportionately distributed to their artists, do the labels get like 65% of every one of those dollars?
It really depends, I think, from artist to artist. I mean, back in the day, I think the majors got as much as 80%, but those numbers have been coming down. I don't, if you're an artist like Taylor Swift, she went to Universal. She came with this catalog. She had an enormous amount of clout, and Universal essentially was little more than a distributor for her, right? So Taylor probably gets the bulk of her royalties. You're seeing, with independent labels, many of the deals are getting closer to 50-50 at this point in time. But I think with the majors, and particularly the majors control so much legacy content.
Right.
Rolling Stone and Elvis Costello and
Beatles,
Rihanna,
Michael Jackson, yeah,
exactly. And so
the Eagles, biggest, I think to this day, biggest selling record album of all time is Eagles' Greatest Hits Volume 1.
Yep, yep. And so I talked about the artist talking to me about that it's unfair because to them, if it's $50 every 6 months, it puts gas in the tank of the van, it buys some drumsticks and some guitar strings, and it's something, right? And the interesting thing is that none of the big distributors have spoken out about this, right? CDBaby, TuneCore, DistroKid, um, they've all been, really mum about it. And I mean, this is hurting them, right? I mean, this is coming out of their hide. And why haven't they said anything? Because Spotify is their single biggest
Yeah, by far.
driver of streaming royalties, right? So I
Right.
guess nobody wants to step on Spotify's toes. Um, and so, the indie artists, they're kind of getting the shaft, and I think it's unfair. And I have, you know, I have nothing to gain or lose from this, at least directly. I get no Spotify royalties, so if they like me or they don't like me doesn't really matter. I think it's patently unfair. So, the Spotify responded and said, well, you know, your tracks, 99.5 of all of our tracks uh, that have at least 1,000, 95% of our streams are from tracks that have at least 1,000 streams. Okay, great. So what, right? Yes, of course. If Benson Boone has 2.5 billion streams, right? That really, brings that number up. So, they're trying to spin the data in a way that, you know, makes makes their ugly baby look pretty, right? It's tracks that stream under 1,000 streams don't contribute a ton of streams, but it represents a ton of tracks and a ton of artists. Um, and so their point, they say, well, each of those tracks that make money make more. Yeah, hell yeah. But you've demonetized 175 million tracks to pay the 24 million tracks that are already getting royalties to pay
The
them more.
175 million tracks belong to how many people? Would you say?
I would, this is
Figure.
like, it's like one of these interview questions, right? Uh, that you might ask a potential taxi hire to see if they have logic and reasoning ability.
Right.
So if there's a lot of singles nowadays that are being released. If it's 10 songs per album, if it was all albums, it would be 17 million albums. Many artists have a couple of albums, but many artists, it probably represents, my guess is something like that, between 10 and 20 million artists, very broadly. Um, so, you know, and Spotify themselves say, yeah, it represents half of our total royalties, which is becoming significant. And I'm like, yeah, it's significant. It's almost $50 million,
Yeah.
right? That you're taking away from the independent artist, and you know, so
Did they claim it was a pain in the butt to do all that accounting? Generate that many payments. I mean, what when I remember when this got announced. I don't remember why they said they were doing it. I do know there are a couple of big, gigantic production music libraries that don't like to do individual deals. They like to only pay out to a record label that has 4 or 5 artists/songwriters on it, because they write one check. And then that entity, the label or publisher, distributes the money proportionately to the people who earned it. So did they apply logic like that, or just came out of the blue because some of the majors thought they had a way to make money with by doing nothing? Great gig, by the way.
I think the major labels look down their nose at DIY artists. Um, there was a major label exec who shall remain nameless, who said a couple of years ago that the independent distributors, CDBaby and the like, are merchants of garbage. And and people have the labels have complained that there's too much content getting uploaded because it gets in the way of
the good stuff that we want you to
good
hear.
stuff, the good stuff, right? Which is total bullshit, because Spotify's algorithm is probably already suppressing some of that DIY content, right? I don't, when I get my songs from Spotify's Release Radar or Discovery Weekly or whatever it is, right? It's always stuff that I already know and that I already liked generally. And so this stuff, these 175, the 93 million tracks that had between 0 and 11 streams, they're just quietly sitting on a server somewhere, right? In Sweden.
Right.
Right? But they're not in the way of, Sabrina Carpenter's next song getting discovered by a music fan. Not at all. So it's a disingenuous argument. If you put the slide up, Spotify responded with some lame justification. They said, our policy helps ensure that as much money as possible reaches the emerging and professional artists that our platform is built to support. Because labels and distributors require a minimum amount to withdraw, usually $2 to $50 per withdrawal, and banks charge a fee for the transaction, usually $1 to $20, these small monthly payments often don't reach the upload. So you can put this away, but what Spotify is actually implying is that we're sending out $2 checks, and the artist then has to pay $1 to get that check, and they're only gonna get $1,
right?
Which again is bullshit. Excuse my French. It's just it. If you're a DistroKid, if you're a TuneCore, if you're a CDBaby, the money's just coming to your account, right? And at some point, when there's enough money that it's interesting to you, whether it's $100 or $200 or $50, then you tell them, pay me, and they ACH it right to your bank account, and there may be a modest fee of $2, $3, whatever it is. But this, and by the way, they're talking about this, saying that the labels do this as well. Nobody is sending out $2 and $5 ACH transfers. And the irony is, it's not saving Spotify any money or any effort, any time, right? They still have to track the songs. They're still paying out the royalties. The main thing, the only thing that happens is the checks that go to CDBaby, TuneCore, and DistroKid are smaller, $15 million if it was equal, right? $15 million or smaller to each of those last year, and 15 million or so larger to each of the majors. That's the only difference. And the biggest irony is that they still have to track and pay the publishing to the individual publishers or songwriters on the demonetized tracks. What's the point? The point is caving to external pressure. So,
wow.
So really, what do you do about it, right? That's.
I don't know. What do you think we should do about it?
Well, I've had a number of artists say, well, class action suit. We should have a class action suit.
Right, so they can each get $1.57 and the lawyers get 20 million each.
Well, if the lawyers thought that there was a case and that the money was interesting enough, some lawyer would have some lawyer would have contacted me, said, Tony, you got a big mouth about this.
Right, you should be the
put your money where your mouth is and help me get a class together.
Right. Yeah, just so everybody knows, I'm more familiar with class action lawsuits than I'd like to be. I won one, actually, 20 twice. But my point is that it doesn't matter if you have a class of 10,000 people, 100,000 people, a million people. The lawyers are the only ones that win every time. I'm quoting a very old quote here, but at some point, like 10 years ago, do you know that the biggest lobby in Washington, D.C. was the Trial Lawyers Association? And that means that they donate money to candidates so that the candidates treat them the way they want the lawyers get treated. And that's why America is the only country I'm aware of, and maybe the only country in the world, where you can sue somebody frivolously and you can lose with that lawsuit. Any other country in the world, if you sue somebody frivolously and you lose, you have to pay for lawyers on both sides. That stops people from filing frivolous lawsuits. In America, that's not the case. So in these class action suits, if the lawyers, they hardly ever go to trial. 95% of them settle, and usually it settles by somebody saying, we admit no wrongdoing. However, we're going to pay X amount of dollars to this class action fund, and out of that fund, let's say it's $50 million. The lawyers will walk away with something like 44 million of those dollars, and the rest of it gets distributed equally to all the people who were part of the class. It's so screwed.
Yeah, I also think with these class actions, $47 million is not nearly interesting enough,
right,
for all the all the work that has to be done getting the class together. And frankly, what Spotify is doing may not be illegal. I'm not a lawyer. I haven't had a lawyer. Like I said, I have no skin in this game. I'm not going to spend my precious dollars to ask my lawyer to interpret whether it's legal or not, because I wouldn't have standing to sue Spotify anyway. But there's, it may be legal. I mean, look, YouTube, let's be honest, YouTube doesn't monetize YouTube channels until they have X amount of subscribers and X amount of hours of viewership. So
good point. And they sell ads regardless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's the aggregate of that? Yeah. Same model.
Well, so yeah, it's interesting because Spotify actually, in a way, gets a lot more flack than YouTube. But Spotify pays 0.3 of a penny, and YouTube's average royalty is something not YouTube Music, the subscription service. I'm talking YouTube, the video platform, where, by the way, most all of that audio is, right?
Yeah.
And gets consumed. Pays something like 6/100ths of a penny or something like that. So it's tiny. But I guess YouTube was first, and people kind of got used to it, and I guess YouTube doesn't charge the user. So, for whatever reasons, YouTube has escaped most of that wrath. So what are you to do? What are you to do as an artist? Because as much as you're unhappy about Taylor Swift getting some of your royalties, getting your $50 or $100, I don't think leaving Spotify actually is a viable option for artists. I have artists telling me, "Oh, I took my music off Spotify." Okay, what are you going to do now? Because nobody's going to be able to find your music. Spotify is the biggest platform, right? That has the biggest subscriber base by far. It has the most active subscriber base, right? There's the most streams per average subscriber, much more engagement than Apple, Amazon, Tidal, Deezer, you name them. So you want your music to be there. If you're an emerging artist, if you want to be discovered, you need to be where people are listening.
Yeah.
So Spotify, I think, is the biggest platform. So I think that the unfortunate truth is, this is unless some sharp lawyer finds this worthwhile and thinks there's a case, this is the world we live in at this point in time. And, we have to suck it up and put our big boy and big girl pants on as artists and figure out how else am I going to get the word out about myself, right? Use Spotify, but use it as a promo or a discovery platform. Right?
Is it
Don't
on
worry
an
about the
annual?
royalties.
Sorry, I stepped on you.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Is it on what is it? You have to have 1,000 spins per year. So if you had 1,001 this year, next year you only had 999. You would get monetized this year, but not next, or is it one time and the door is opened?
I don't know if it's per calendar year or if it's like it's a rolling 12 months. So at the end of March, I believe it's a rolling that at the end of March or at the end of May, you need to have had 999 streams from the prior May for your track to monetize. So, look, Spotify has become for many people a bit like radio, right? They listen to people listen to playlists. People have this on at work, all day long. You have the like I mentioned, the Discovery Weekly, the Release Radar playlists that come out every week with recommendations based on the listeners' listening habits and preferences. I think you need to be there as an artist. You just have to. You can't count on Spotify to make a living, right? Which, at the dollars that we were talking about, you couldn't anyway, right? $50 or even, if I'm getting $100 a quarter, I still can't can't come close to paying any bills for that. So I mean,
go ahead.
Go ahead. So I think you can certainly work on, try to figure out, okay, what can I do, between email, between social, between kind of YouTube, between live performances, to get as many tracks as possible over 1,000 streams. There's, in fact, on our Discmakers blog, we have an article specifically. You can so if you go to the Discmakers blog, you can search for Spotify 1,000 tracks, and there's an article about how to get more plays for your tracks, to get more of them over 1,000. But really, I think for artists, it's still the basics are still the same as they always were, right? You have to work on writing the best songs possible, right? You have to get a great recording. You have to you have to start locally and give great performances that kind of pull in listeners and engage with them, add them to your mailing list. It's still, Michael, I know you're an old school guy like me. You're an avid believer and proponent of email, to drive results and drive transactions. And I know you'd certainly do that with Taxi, as do we with Discmakers. It's, I've had this saying, I've adapted the golf saying, a drive for show, putt for dough, to social for show, email for dough.
Yeah. I'm going to steal that, I promise. I love it.
Because people don't buy through social media. Then next somebody's going to chime into your chat. So and so sold, $10,000 on their TikTok store. Okay, that's the exception that proves the rule, right? There always is some outlier, but in general, people are not on social media to pull out their wallet and buy concert tickets or buy merch, etc. You have to do that yourself. You have to build your mailing list. You have to do the blocking and tackling of being an artist.
I could not agree more.
Gradually.
Yeah, but here's the problem. Is for as long, maybe even 10 years before you and I got into the business. Oh, God, I'm trying to remember the name of a movie, The Star Maker or something. This guy that went around like Philly and discovered young talent and groomed them in a mansion. Not that kind of grooming, but groomed them.
Not Diddy. Wasn't Diddy, was it?
No, not that kind of grooming. Anyway, my point being that there was a time where you could get discovered and you could put out a single and follow it up, a month later with an album, and your stuff blows up, and the label gives you a budget, puts you on the road, and you blow up and you're a star. All based on you look good, you have a good stage performance, and you had one or two, or maybe by some act of God, 3 great songs. So that is no longer true. And by the time I got into the industry...
I'll disagree with you on that.
Okay. You have an outlier?
Yes. Remember last summer, the song of summer was Man in Finance? No. You don't listen to the kids' music.
I don't. I watch film and TV music obsessively, though.
So, there are artists who go viral on TikTok, right?
Right. That I'm aware of.
Yes. And so this was one local girl close to Philly, actually, family, niece of a friend of mine. She had the song of the summer last year, and it was all TikTok. She didn't make the money from the TikTok royalties, right? Because there's not enough of them there. But she was able to parlay this into live concerts and a label contract. And
that's where I was going with all this, which is,
yeah.
But people still live in this fantasy world of somebody's going to discover me, scoop me up, and fly away with me, and I'm going to get a private jet ride and a briefcase with $1 million. The movie was called Star Maker. It was probably from the 80s or 90s. Anyway, my experience, which is considerable, I've been in the industry for 50 years, and I've known a lot of label people, I've known a lot of managers, I've heard a lot of inside stuff being around
Michael,
this long.
You started in this industry when you were 5. You look so good.
I started this industry, literally, this is 50 years for me now, believe it or not. And you lived near Philly, the club, the Middle East. Okay, if you are a band from Trenton or Philly or Bucks County, anywhere down in that area, you have to get 300 people in the Middle East once a week for 90 days, 6 months, a year, be repeatable at that. So then you go knocking on the doors of clubs that are 50 miles out from the Middle East and say, we top off the Middle East, 3, 4, 5 times a month. Can we play your club? Yes, you can. And then you pay your dues at that club. And then you expand to a 100-mile circle of influence. And then a 500-mile. Before you know it, you're all the way up and down the East Coast. Not before you know it. After a couple of years, you are playing clubs up and down the East Coast. And that's when A&R people hear about you, and they will get on a plane because you are topping out those clubs. They will fly out to see what your live show looks like. But you, as the band, you're showing up in Philly the day before your show at the Middle East. You're putting posters on telephone poles. You're calling the crappy little radio stations that nobody really listens to because the big ones aren't going to put you on. You're a nobody band, but the little guy will, just to have some change in content. And you do all that demeaning stuff. You're your own roadie. You sleep with your bandmate's socks in your face, in the back of a van. All that stuff for a chance for it to pay off. Well, social media, the people who succeed on social media are typically the same people, and in the same percentage of people that had that work ethic before social media existed. Yeah. So there are always going to be winners and losers, and the winners, the vast majority of the time, are going to be the people that put the work in. So that hasn't changed. We see it every day at Tech. So you know what? Last night, 11 o'clock, sitting on my kitchen island, and I'm working on the members' success stories for the newsletter. And we have 9 of them just because of the layout of the thing. So I work on all 9. I realize every one of those 9 people said, I got this deal because I came to the road rally, the Taxi Road Rally. I met collaborators who introduced me to music library owners. I met a music library owner. My mentor at the One-to-One Mentor was a publisher, blah, 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 blah. They showed up. they drop $500 on airfare and another $500 on hotel room. And it's literally now getting to the point where virtually every one of our successful members has certain things in common. Number one, they work on a regular basis and they probably get up early in the morning and do 2 hours in their studio before their family comes down for their post toasties. Number two is they read the listings every day so they don't miss opportunities. Number three, they hang out on our forum because it's 20 years of incredible information by people who have succeeded before them that are willing to share this stuff, incredibly generous of them to do it. And they go to the road rally. And we keep begging our members and telling everybody, it's like you with this topic. It's like, please, I can practically guarantee success for anybody that wants it if you just do these things. Well, a million excuses later, I don't have the time, I didn't do the things, but I want to be successful. I want to make $100K a year and sync like that guy. So, the people that aren't getting the 1,000 spins could get the 1,000 spins if they wanted to work at it. But what you're saying is true.
Absolutely. I will venture that the people who are watching us now have been to the road rally, right?
Yeah.
Because they're paying attention. They are interested in self-improvement. Look, it's amazing how infrequently people actually just do the basics.
Yeah.
Right? They write some mediocre songs, they record them, and their shit doesn't stink. They think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and so does their girlfriend and their mother, right?
And their mother.
And then happy Mother's Day to all the mothers, belated. We love our mothers, and they love our songs. So but like it's the people who make it do more than the basics. I think the one thing that is the biggest determinant of success in probably any field, certainly in music, is having a growth mindset.
Yeah.
That you are interested, not just willing, you are interested in learning from others. You are interested in getting better. You want every next thing that you do, every next song that you write, every next recording that you make, every next performance, you want it to be just a little better than the last. And it's the same thing with the emails you write, the social posts that you post. That growth mentality is I think a difference maker, and your member success stories are a testament to that, right? Many of them are songwriters who've been long time Taxi members and contributors, and their early songs were rejected and they took the feedback and they kept working until they started songs forward, and until then some of them led to deals, and that's a big thing. So back to our original story, I mean, what do you do as an artist? You have to do those same basics. You have to write great songs. You have to generate fans. It's almost like hand-to-hand combat. It's one at a time, particularly, and I know there's many songwriters that don't perform, and it's actually harder, right? That's where Taxi is such an amazing resource, that if you're a non-performing songwriter, you Michael, and your organization provides access to the kinds of opportunities that still allow songwriters to generate a living. But otherwise, you perform. You gain fans. One gig at a time. You add them to your mailing list. And how do you make a buck? You sell concert tickets. You sell CDs. You sell T-shirts. You sell vinyl. It's the art. Look, if you buy 100 CDs from disc makers and it costs you $2 per CD, and you sell them for $12 at your concert, you would need 3,000 streams to make the same profit margin as you do from selling one CD,
Yeah.
which is easier.
And you
Right?
told me something probably 10 years ago or more that it might have been 20 years ago. Have a second person with you at the show who's not on the stage, whose job it is to sell the CDs and the merch, and point them out from the stage. And I remember you mentioned that in casual conversation. I think it was you and I and Doug Minnick were out for a burger and a beer one night. And about 2 weeks later, I went to do one of my little 3-hour taxi mini seminars in, of all places, Minneapolis in January. I grew up in the plains of Illinois, plenty cold there. Minneapolis, January, that is on the no-go list for everybody. Just giving you fair warning now. Anyway,
I've been there.
We had, I don't know, 200 or 300 people show up for this thing. I guess they were so bored from sitting inside, not freezing, that they were excited to go see me. And it was the only time I ever had a second person with me when I did one of these. And I said, and if anybody's interested in joining for $50 off today, go see that guy in the back of the room. And Doug waved his arm. And we sold like $2,000 or $3,000 worth of memberships because just following that simple advice. So, which, thank you. I should have sent you a 20% commission on whatever we sold that night. But you're right. It's just do the work because it's a small business. But the fantasy that I was talking about earlier, that if I write just that one great song, all the doors will fly open and everything will change for me. I guarantee you, if you ask Taylor Swift, Bad Bunny, Whoosy Boozy, whatever, any of those artists, they're all going to tell you that they labored 4 years and it took a very coordinated, focused effort.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, some of these big guys now, they have, 12-person songwriting teams, right? But look, I've told you this story, right? I mean, I played in punk rock bands. I wrote songs back in the day when I was in college, right out of college, and I thought it was good. And then, obviously, it didn't go anywhere because I was smart enough to realize that I wasn't going to make a living as a punk rock drummer. And I got a day gig at Disc Makers, entry level, way back in the dinosaur age of 1987.
Wow.
And so but I got to the first road rally and you had Steve Seskin on, and he was like deconstructing Beatles songs, and I've seen Steve, several times, and he blows my mind every time with how he talks through composition and song structure, and he talks to, like, a song that he was writing, and what was the first version, and what was the second version, and what was the third version, and like, by the time it gets, as you're like listening to, by the time it gets to this was the final version and the final lyric, like, you literally want to cry because it's so good, right? Mm-hmm. And first time I saw Steve Seskin probably in 1995, I was like, man, if I'd have known this stuff about songwriting, my stuff would have been so much better, right? And that's the value of going to the road rally. I'm doing the pitch for you, Michael.
Thank you.
Because if you haven't been to the road rally, it is truly. I love going to the conference. I think it's perhaps the best conference in the country. The energy is tremendous. The camaraderie, the networking, and there's real connections being made. But there's also a ton of great learning. That takes place there.
It breaks my heart a little bit because I put so much, how much energy and hours I put into the road rally every year. Just ridiculous. I typically work 90 days straight without a day off. I'm already working on the road rally, little bits and pieces, an hour. I tend to do stuff on Sundays when nothing else is bugging me, but I'll do 90 days straight without a day off before the road rally, and all that energy goes into picking the right panelists, coming up with the right topics, putting people on a panel that get along with each other, that all have a similar energy. All these considerations go into it. And then I look at the ballroom for some of the panels that I thought were going to be super well attended, and I've got, roughly 800 and some odd seats in that ballroom, and only 200 or 300 of them are occupied. Everybody else is out at the bar watching a baseball game, or granted, it is like World Series.
Well, you have a lot of panels going on at the same time, though. Right?
We've cut down. Last year, people said was probably the best rally we've ever done, and I think that's something that we did before. We eliminated a good 25-30% of the classes last year.
Yeah.
Because there was too much repetition.
Good. Yeah, exactly. And competition, right? You're better off kind of having the best, strongest content, a little more limited, little more limited menu. So when did you start Taxi, Michael?
1992.
1992. Okay. So we're, well, you can have you know what you should do? You should have a 33 and a third, in honor of the LP, a 33 and a third anniversary Taxi Road Rally this year.
There you go.
And make it a big, huge, ginormous blowout, and offer to pay every Taxi member $1,000 to attend because it's so good. It's a tremendous conference.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because Tony has been involved in some personally back when CDBaby was still owned by Tony, and was AVI Digital, right? Was the AVL was the name of the corporation that owned it. Anyway, they did CDBaby conferences. It's hard, I mean, not only have you been a dear friend for God knows how many years, but we experience a lot of the same things. You and I have kind of grown. We're on opposite coasts, but we've kind of grown up together and been through processes together. We are literally good enough friends that if I had to call him at 2:00 in the morning and wake him up for a bona fide emergency, he'd not only pick up the phone, he'd be there for me. All that said, all we ever talk about are musicians because that's what we know. That's what we do. That's who we've helped. It's hard for people to understand maybe that it's not just about making money or having customers. It is less like work when you do something you're passionate about. And we are clearly both idiots or passionate. I'm not sure.
It also definitely is. To me, it also is. This is a passion project for me. A 38-year long passion project.
Wow.
Because I was an unknown independent artist, selling vinyl records in 1986 out of, our tour van, and I see the same things. I mean, how can I today, offer, content to artists, every weekend that has some kind of value? Because even though I haven't performed live in decades, because the fundamentals are still the same, and there's still so many artists that are not doing the fundamentals, right? And again, write great songs, give a great performance, and then ask for the sale, right? Hey, we got a merch booth back there. I'm going to be back there autographing my CDs after my set. Come on by. I'd love to meet you.
Yep.
If you say that, you're going to sell 3-4 times as much as if you don't say it.
Did you ever read the book Influence by Dr. Robert Cialdini? It's essentially a marketing, psychology book. I'll make this really short because it's a little off the track. But they did experiments. I don't know if he did it or some university did it, where they had a woman screaming, "Help, help, help, I'm being raped," in an alleyway between 2 apartment buildings late at night. Nobody did anything for her. When she got specific and said, "Call 911, I'm being raped," people called 911. You have to ask for the sale was the point of that. So something as dire as
I know about that experiment, and it's a sad state of affairs.
Right. It is. Yeah, I'm being raped wasn't good enough. I'm being raped, please call 911 does the trick.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
I don't know.
what's a person to do about Spotify and their royalties?
Do you have a
Ignore
suggestion,
them
or
and
do you
ignore.
want me to ask the people in the chat if they've got some thoughts on, see if anybody
Yeah,
has a great idea? All right, chatters.
absolutely. I mean, my suggestion is what I already said. You got to do the basics. Win over fans one at a time. Use Spotify as a discovery platform. Hope that you get some people to, click and follow you on Spotify, and then figure out, ways that you can somehow leverage them to your social media where you can capture contact info and let them know when you're performing live in their town. Tell
Social
them free,
media.
tell them fun.
Oh gosh, I can't think of her name. Somebody we both known for a long time. Red hair, social media queen for musicians. Why can I not remember her name? She used to be really good friends with Derek. We all knew her. Anyway,
You're not talking Ariel Hyatt.
yeah, Ariel.
Yeah,
So
she's PR. Yeah.
yeah, but she was onto social media before anybody really in the music sphere said, this is something that can be leveraged in a big way. But she said people don't go on Facebook or whatever it was at the time. It's probably pre-Facebook. People don't go on social media to shop, which has become a little less true these days. But you know what? I see stuff when I'm on social. I spend more time on social now in a day than I used to in a year because we're doing stuff on social now. And this all does have a point, which is that it used to be you couldn't sell on social. And when I see something like, I bought a metal detector. I must be getting really old. I want to go out metal detecting. It looks like a fun hobby, gets you out of the house, away from the screens, So I spent a chunk of time reading about that. And of course, ads would pop up, buy this metal detector. So I can't be alone in this. If I see something, I don't click and go to the TikTok store. I go to Amazon and check out the thing that I just learned about on TikTok. So that goes back to your point earlier, which is promotional tool. But you have to drive them to somewhere where they can consummate the sale.
Yes, exactly right. And then the hard thing in your example is then tracking what's my ROI on my social advertising budget if people are going to Amazon and buying. We've
Right.
done paid social for years. I can't track any ROI to it. I stopped doing it for a few years and we're like, let's try it again. There's so much stuff being sold. I bought stuff from Instagram, right? And because I saw an ad, but
Yeah,
for most
tracking
artists,
it.
it's really hard. And yeah.
Um,
So you're gonna ask
Oh
the
yeah.
the
Okay, guys in the
attendees.
chat, make production. Zen Chief Engineer says make production music for TV and film. Um, I'm right there with him on that one. I gotta say, everybody's worried about AI robots are gonna make the music, but unless the copyright laws change, the networks aren't going to use that music. And it's funny because there are companies out there, one of which we were talking about. We know an individual at a company that we were talking about before we went live, whose thing is create a bunch of music, and now they own another company that they're using to do licensing with. But people are going to be trying to license music that they created with AI. No network will use that stuff because copyright law doesn't allow you to copyright it, number one. And number two, they will only pay a human and not a robot. So there are still issues. Nobody's job in my corner of the world is being stolen yet. And frankly, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the chat to see if anything pops up. I'll take a question a minute. But you know what?
Though those rules may change.
Yeah,
The
they
head of the
might.
U.S. Copyright Office just got canned.
I heard that,
Uh,
and I don't know why. Some people, I saw some commentary, well, Elon Wonder can because she was a roadblock to something he was doing. I don't know. I look at
He's
everything.
probably part of the deep state.
Maybe. I don't know. I did go to room B14 in the Library of Congress, basement room 14, many years ago. It's a giant like bomb shelter down there. The there's like an underground city. And the horizon is so far away that the curvature of the earth actually comes into play. You'll see people down there in a golf cart driving away from you. They disappear over the horizon after about a block or two. It's pretty weird. Yeah. But I've got to say, they still had parchments laying on those little metal carts like you had in 6th grade when they put the movie projector on it and brought it into your class so you could watch the AT&T movies. Or Bell Labs movies, I guess they were. Anyway, I looked over and I saw there were parchment scrolls rolled up on this metal thing. And I said to the lady behind the counter, are those what I think they are? And she goes, yeah. And I said, are you guys that far behind in filing your copyrights? And she goes, oh, honey, you have no idea. Oh, man. Anyway, here's a question. Happy Ron's got a question. Here's one from Ken Crombie. If not Spotify, who would you recommend that does this stuff right? Pono?
So, look, there's a trade-off, right? Believe it or not, of the bigger platforms, because Pono is defunct and sounds great, but those players that have the shape of a Toblerone bar, they don't fit in your pocket very well. Tidal pays the highest royalties per track. They pay a little over a penny per track. But so what if it's got a population of a few million subscribers versus 500 million or plus for Spotify, you're not going to get any plays, right? So there's a trade-off between volume of plays and subscribers and opportunities to be discovered versus royalties per stream. I would, if I know I'm not going to be able to, pay any bills from it anyway, I would rather be where the listeners are, where the potential critical mass is to be discovered, and then I'll figure out the monetization kind of off platform.
Somebody brought up a great question. It's a little relevant to this, which is, question, please talk about the fake AI artists on Spotify. They don't pay royalties on those streams at all. So I don't know enough about this to speak intelligently about it, frankly. Do you know anything about, so if I'm sure there are gazillions of AI creations up there on Spotify that they can't pay royalties to, where's that money go?
My guess is I don't believe Spotify has the ability to really detect whether it's
AI or not,
AI or human. And you have companies, they put a name on there and they figure out how to collect a royalty. Yes, AI tracks are not legally copyrightable, though obviously AI assisted tracks are copyrightable. And so if you believe that there's no royalties being paid on those AI tracks, you're probably also sitting around the Christmas tree waiting for Santa Claus to come down the chimney on the 24th of December. So I think that this is ripe for kind of pulling away royalties that would have otherwise gone to human performers and human songwriters, and I'm sure it's being done already. I don't know what else.
Here's a question from Happy Ron. What do we do to keep YouTube and the like from claiming publishing rights to our music? I'm not really understanding that. What do you mean, Ron? How do they claim publishing?
YouTube is a wild and woolly place, and between takedown requests and copyright strikes, etc. Um, I don't know exactly how it works. I've been out of this now for 5 years since CDBaby and Dismakers separated. Um, but it's the whole space. I was saying to Michael earlier, it's kind of weird, but I'm uh, I'm in the disc business, and the disc format obviously is a very mature format. But I'm happy I'm no longer in the digital distribution business because it's a really tough space. Now with AI, with streaming fraud, of which there's a lot. I know of quite a few independent artists I've heard from who said that their tracks have been taken down for streaming fraud when they 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 did nothing. They themselves did nothing to generate those track plays through
Right.
fraud.
So somebody else jacked their content, retitled it.
Maybe I heard, again, this could be a conspiracy theory, but I've heard that some record labels, when there's an artist at another label that's getting traction, and they have a similar artist that they want to get traction, they will actually pay for fraudulent streams for the artists on the other label to get them deep six
Bounced. Wow,
by
wow,
by the
wow.
streaming platforms.
Wow, it's like the
So
modern
again,
digital mafia.
is it a conspiracy theory or is it real? Could be either.
I just saw a question again from Happy Ron. Michael always says there's a danger with CD Baby claiming publishing, which keeps us from getting deals. Now, what I've said, first of all, I always say CD Baby, TuneCore, they're all legitimate companies. Nobody's
Yeah.
ripping anybody off. We're friends with people at these companies. They've been sponsors of the Road Rally and such. But if you check the box, you see the thing, would you like us to monetize your music? And you go, oh, yeah, sure. If somebody wants to put my song on a TV show, you check the box. By checking the box, you have either signed a publishing admin deal, meaning that they
Yeah.
do the work of collecting the money for you, tracking, collecting, or you've signed a full-on publishing deal. So then you submit that same piece of music to a taxi listing where a production music library is looking to sign stuff, and you can't sign with them because you've already got a publishing deal or an admin deal. Now, the publishing or admin deals through some of the online distributors could, in fact, be non-exclusive, which would allow you then to sign a non-exclusive deal with a non-exclusive library. It's just too hard for me to explain that to people who are completely new about this stuff. It's a little deeper in the weeds than they'd probably be capable of following me at this point. But again, there's nothing wrong with those companies. It's just you have to decide, do I want to wait for somebody to stumble across my thing on YouTube or whatever platform, reach out to TuneCore, CDBaby, DistroKid, whoever is offering or has you've done that pub deal or admin deal with. They do get stuff. They don't actively go out and plug it like a music library does. They wait until somebody knocks on the door and says, hey, I'd like to license this thing, and then they make sure that the deal gets done right and that the money is tracked, and they get their percentage for doing that. So again, they're not doing anything untoward, uncool, or illegal, but it does really prevent you from doing business with people whose job it is to plug stuff and fill orders for the people who are looking all day long, 365 days a year. So it's kind of a
By the
choice.
way, as a point of interest, CDBaby does not offer pub admin any longer.
Oh, really? Why? Any idea?
I have no inside information. I think global royalty collection is really difficult. And when you're dealing with 250,000 artists with royalties that are de minimis, it becomes a pretty tough gig. So I think now they have this service called CDBaby Boost, where essentially what they'll do is they'll register you with the MLC for mechanical
Yeah.
collection.
I had a woman from the MLC was a sponsor of the rally last year, and then after the rally, I had a woman on. Her name is escaping me at the moment. So smart, such a bright light. I love this lady. You should get her on your Music Minute sometime. She's, I think she's also like Associate Dean of the Music School at the University of Miami, my alma mater. So she and I really bonded. But the people at the MLC are extremely bright and extremely articulate about what they do and what they don't do. Reverb Nation just started offering licensing. Basically, the CDBaby model of licensing that was happening some years ago. And I had the same reaction when I saw the press release go out that they were doing it. It's like, I think that people think that somebody is going to sign the form and that the money just starts rolling in because it just happens. If it happens, it happens. We're not spending any money to make it happen, but it's the international royalties. Yeah. Because it's an international audience. And collecting that money, no bueno.
No, it's very difficult. And, I have it on good account that some of the international performing rights societies they're so overwhelmed with all these emerging artists who have, to add just that they're not even able to add them all to their catalog.
Yeah.
For collection purposes.
I am curious to see what goes on with AI, because that the PROs on a global basis, not just the American ones, really need to figure out a way. AI is not going away. AI music creation is getting better. I say something that I've not heard anybody else say, but I'm probably not alone in saying this, and that is that if my wife tried to create a track using Suno or Udio or whatever, using AI, my wife's not a musician. Avid music lover, but not a musician. So she could say, make a Mother's Day song for my mother. And it would come up with something cute that sounds reasonably well, certainly better than what my wife on her own could make, which would be nothing. However, one day I sat down, I believe it was Suno, and I told it to make a 90-second instrumental cue. And I think I just gave it the genre of the cue that I wanted. And what came out, a minute later was like, not bad. I wouldn't be scared to death of this today. I wouldn't be scared to death of it 2 years from now. I brought all my A&R guys down here and listen. They listen. They're like, that's not very good. They were a little more terse than that. And they left. And I thought, it's my fault. I didn't give it a good prompt. So I gave it a very specific prompt. Okay, I want this genre of cue. I want 2 bars to be sparse with only 3 instruments. The next 2 bars add a 4th instrument. The next 2 bars add a 5th instrument. Whatever. In bar 16, break it down, reverse the chord progression, strip the instruments back down to 3, and every 2 bars add another one back in, then bring it to a crescendo where it goes back into the A section. I did all this stuff, and what came out of it was like, wow, that's impressive. Yeah. The sounds weren't that good. The ironic thing was, first one had the best string sounds I've ever heard not come out of a real orchestra ever. The second one, where I gave it all specific direction, the string sounded like a DX7 from 1984. It's just awful. But what it tells me is it's a tool. It's a great tool for musicians. Rather than being afraid of it, you guys are the ones who have the power to use the tool well, because you can tell it to do this. You can tell it to play ostinato or legato or whatever. I'm not sure if I got the ostinato in the right place there, but you can give it specific directions. Is it the enemy or is it a tool? It's the enemy.
It's the enemy just as much as drum machines were the enemy,
Exactly.
right? And the next, so this is what I actually think is exciting about AI is that the next generation of musicians are going to create music through prompts. They're already with AI prompt engineers, right? People who don't necessarily code, but they really know how to write these prompts. And that's going to be a skill that many of us are going to have to learn if we don't know it yet. And I think that's going to be a skill, just like, we have digital natives and social natives. I think the next generation, my granddaughter, who's now 3.5 months old, is gonna be, she is going to interface with devices in natural language, right? Tell it what she wants it to do. She could tell it what kind of bedtime story she wants told, and it'll tell it. And the musicians are going to be the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be kids that learn to play guitar and learn to play drums. They'll always be there, right? There's nothing like performing and playing live, but there are many folks. It's an incremental. I mean, everybody's afraid of AI, but from a technology perspective, with samples and loops and all the technology we have, it's really an incremental, maybe a little larger improvement or advancement compared to much of the technology that we have already.
China is getting ready, I think in August, to host the first humanoid robotic Olympics. I might have to fly over to watch. I guess I could watch videos, but wow.
Yeah. I was talking to some guy. Look, we've lost. I'm sorry to say, tariffs or not, China has. I was talking to a kid, son of a friend of mine, who is a literal rocket engineer, and he worked for a rocketry company. I won't name it, but it's not Blue Horizon and it's not SpaceX because they have, multi-billionaire founders who can, keep pushing it forward. But this is another rocket company, and he's like, this next launch may be our last launch. But man, when we look at China and what China is doing with rocketry and the investments that they're making, they're so far ahead of anything that's, that we can do in the U.S. They have it with electric cars, and this is not a political statement about whether it's fair or not, or whether it's correct or not. But they're directing China with its central planning. They're directing so many resources, financial, developmental, to all these areas that they have deemed to be critical in the future, that it's just really hard. It's really hard to compete. And with tariffs, I'm betwixt and between, right? Are you better off creating a walled garden where your electric cars are just an inferior product to the electric cars that are being built outside of the country, or letting them duke it out and hope that the U.S. learns to build a better electric car, just to name one particular example.
I actually heard on my way to work today, although I got in the car as the story was half done, but apparently China and the U.S. have inked or agreed to the terms of a tariff deal that both countries feel good about.
A 90-day tariff deal.
Okay.
While they hash out more.
All right. So that's at least progress.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's. I don't even want to go down that path. That's a whole.
Let's go back. Let's go back to Spotify.
It's disturbing to me, but this is your to get over 1,000 spins on Spotify, just do the work. I see it every day at Taxi. We have members that make nothing. They walk away disgruntled. They go on a forum or a social media post and say, Taxi, I joined up, didn't do anything for me. No, they didn't do anything for them. We don't make stuff happen without you at least putting in your share of the effort. And it's unfortunate that people go out there and they make it sound like it's Taxi's fault because they don't want to say, I didn't really work hard at it or my music's not that good. Yeah. So I think the same thing is true. As much as it sucks, exactly what you've explained is horrifying to me and heartbreaking. The way around it is to sell 1,001 streams. Or not sell, but get 1,001 streams. And the way you do that is by having a cohesive social media strategy, by doing all the right things that push people to your Spotify channel. When we do social media at Taxi, I don't care if we don't make a penny on it. All I care about is they go to the website and click the See Who Needs Music button, because that gets them on my email list so that they can be made aware on a daily basis of what the industry needs until someday something resonates with them and they go, I've seen 3 listings this week for singer-songwriter stuff. Maybe I should join. And I've seen the Taxi newsletter go out with the success stories, and I've seen success stories on social media. So it's chipping away at all that stuff until you're at 1,001 streams.
And the tools to do that now as an artist are they're incredible. Get a website with Bandzoogle, and email is included, e-commerce is included, no fees for e-commerce to sell your merch and your concert tickets and your CDs and your vinyl. The design templates look amazing, and it's cheap. I forget where it started, $8 a month or something like that, and I mean, your music needs a home online, right? It's not Facebook,
right?
So if your music has a home, if you have your own website, then with your socials you can direct people who see your snippet to your website rather than to Spotify, where you're going to get 0.3 of a penny. To your website, where you can capture an email address, right, in exchange for whatever, where you have a shot at, having them look at your tour calendar and maybe, sell them a t-shirt.
You could not be more right on the money. This is why you and I have been friends for 30 years. We think about stuff and figure it out versus just whining about it. And you're right. Bandzoogle is a great company for doing that. And I actually have them on Taxi TV at least once or twice a year, because you're right. When a music library gets a forward of your music from Taxi, the first thing they think is, I've got customers who could use this. The second thing they think is there more of this? Let me find out what this person does before I email or call them and spend an hour of my time finding out what I could have found out in 5 minutes if I could just click on a website. And that's it. It's the central repository of all your stuff.
If you capture a listener's attention, a listener's ear with one song, right, then, and they like it. Friday, I think it was Friday, I posted something on my socials. Said, listen, I need some new music. Spotify keeps recommending the same stuff in the same genres that I listen to the most. I'm bored with it. Send me some other new stuff, right? And a bunch of people sent me some stuff. And what do? I find one that I like, and immediately I go, okay, go to artist. Who's this artist? And then let me listen to some other stuff, right? Is this just one song that this artist happened to get lucky that I like,
right,
or is there really a whole catalog? It's funny. Speaking of music discovery, I have a couple of friends whose music tastes overlap maybe 10% with mine. Right? It's like the Venn diagrams, there's a relatively small overlap of the two circles. But both of them create playlists, and they send out emails with their songs that they like for the month or what have you. And I have, even though our musical tastes overlap by only 10%, I have discovered some of my favorite artists from those guys just from relatively little. Why? Because it's not the same old that Spotify recommends, right? And so it lies a little bit outside of the core of what I listen to, but somehow it's just completely wonderful. And I just go down these rabbit holes with it.
It's our consumption habits have changed dramatically too, because streaming video brought a whole other dimension to our life. I'm older than you are. I think like close to 10 years older than you are. But in my day, you had 3 black and white channels of TV, and you had AM radio. I remember going to bed with my Panasonic AM radio under my pillow so I could listen to the Beatles doing She Loves You broadcast from WLS in Chicago. Now, my grandkids, my youngest grandkid is 5 years old, and it's hard to get his attention. I walk in their house, the kid's got his face buried in an iPad. At least he's playing somewhat educational, like reading games. He's not playing whatever. So I don't say much to my daughter and son-in-law about it, because he is doing educational stuff. Where's the letter A? Move it to here, or what kind of plant is this? Whatever. But
plus, I'm sure your son-in-law and your daughter would love to hear that feedback from you.
Oh yes, absolutely they would. I've got 4 daughters. The oldest one is 44 years old. I haven't said anything right since 1980. I am the world's leading expert on eye rolls and shoulder shrugs.
My mother, we're really way off topic here, but I gotta say this. My mother had a saying: I taught my children how to speak, and my children taught me how to be quiet.
That's great. Oh man. Anyway, it's a different world, and I try to be as modern as I can be. I read a lot. I used to read more books. I literally forced myself to read an hour every morning when I got up. Either having my coffee in bed or maybe in the John, who knows? But I would read for an hour every day, and I swear, the reason Taxi has been successful is because of the books that I read and what I learned, and made notes and to-do lists from what I learned, and ended up working for me. But nowadays, there's so many things to distract you. I go on Instagram in the morning to see how we did with yesterday's post. An hour and a half later, I'm looking at dachshunds wearing a bun with ketchup and mustard on it because it's a cold winter day. Yes, one of my daughters has a dachshund.
The biggest, I'm craning my neck here because I'm looking around. I see 1 just right around my desk, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books within reach of me, where I bought the book, I'm gonna read this book, and I've gotten no further than the first chapter.
Wow.
It's terrible. The biggest killer of book reading is Netflix. It's just so easy to just say, oh, what are we watching today?
It's getting hard to find good stuff on Netflix anymore.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
so then you end up subscribing to Apple TV Plus, and then you get the Paramount Plus option within Apple TV Plus. And they only release stuff on a weekly basis, like terrestrial TV, which is very frustrating. Anyway.
I have a question. Do we have any viewers left?
Let me see.
Or is it just you and me having a fun conversation like 2 old men?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm sure the chat room is still cranking. Anyway, we're done. We're actually 23 seconds over our time allotment. But you know what? I'm glad we're having this conversation. First of all, I love hanging out with you, and I love to have them share our hang, because whenever I'm on with you or I'm on with Rob Shirelli, I get emails the next day from people that say, I love watching you guys. I learned so much. And I think that somebody's saying now, this has been so interesting. We're hanging on your every word. We're still here. It's a fun conversation. I feel like we're all learning together. It's no longer that there are these guys at the top of the pyramid and everybody else is there to support them. You and I are CEOs of companies, but I've never met any other CEOs I can think of that are as in touch with their customers. I don't even think of them as customers anymore. Maybe it's unhealthy, but so many of my taxi members I'm friends with. I talk to them on the weekends and stuff, and that's what this is all about. Maybe it's the new immersive business model where the CEOs like each other enough that they share stuff, and then we're sharing it openly with the people who pay money for the services we provide. I don't know.
Look, it's unusual what we do, right? I on the weekends after my Indie Music Minute videos drop, and we send an email about it. It's got my email link to it, I will get emails from artists, sometimes with very personal notes about something that touched them from what I said in the video, and sometimes it's like, hey, I want to reorder my CDs. Do you still have my files? Right? And I'll answer, and I will answer. Sometimes the answer may be just log into your Discmaker's account and click reorder. Because to me that's fun. On a daily basis, I don't really deal with artists, and so weekends, this is my opportunity to actually have a direct, kind of discourse with the artists that we work with. And
we should do something
really
at the rally. If you can come to the rally this year, we should do one of those things at 5:30, like I did with Ken Colley, listening to Fleetwood Mac stuff, instrument by instrument, talking to him. Let's do a thing in the ballroom at like 5:30 or 6 where people can bring in a burger and a beer and just hang out. And like you, me, Shirelli, and one other person that are good at having our conversations seem to be appealing to these other people. So let's just have a hang. Let's do it in a face-to-face way at the rally, because I enjoy doing it. I think
we could combine that with an AMA.
With a what?
Ask Me Anything.
Oh. Yeah, here we call it Ask Michael Anything. Yeah. It's still an AMA. Well, thank you. Thank you for making me think about this more. Thank you for, making our members think about it more. And I just don't know why more isn't being said about it. But you know what? There are lawyers. I can think of lawyers that would file a class action over $40 or $50 million thing, because they're going to still walk away with a few $1 million just for repping the class. So
I would help them. If any of those lawyers are watching or will watch this later on YouTube, give me a call. I'll be happy to put some resources behind getting a class together.
I could hook you up with a class action lawyer, but it's one that I don't like very much. The one that won the case for me is now retired because he made his many millions. Anyway, have a great week. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this and taking time away from the family. Thanks
to everybody watching and listening. It's always a pleasure, Michael, to be here. I wish I had better answers than just stick to the basics and.
But it's always true.
Write great songs and. No silver bullets, unfortunately.
Right, exactly right. There's the title of your book, No Silver Bullets, because there aren't.
That's a good one.
It really is. Boy, that's maybe the most profound thing that you've ever said, because that nutshells the whole thing. There are no silver bullets, but the brass ring can be had if you're just willing to do the work. Most people will lie to him or herself. They'll blame other people for it. They won't
I
do
was
the work.
going to say this earlier, when I talked about the growth mindset, the other, I think one of the most toxic traits is, and I can't stand it when somebody does it to me, when one of my employees does it to me, where, I'm like, what happened? And they're like, not my fault. They give this salute, right? No, it's that person. It's that person, right? Like I think part of having a growth mindset is when something goes wrong, you look in the mirror first. What could I have done differently, right, to prevent this from going bad, going wrong, going off the tracks? And doesn't mean I only look at myself. There's other people that, who can make mistakes, obviously, but not looking in the mirror, I think, when things go bad and just looking for blame is a big problem.
Yeah, it's what you do when you're in grade school. By the time you're 40, you need to stop that stuff. I just made a note: growth mindset with you, me, and Shirelli at Road Rally 2025.
Sounds good.
He loves talking about this stuff too. Thank you. Give my best to your lovely wife. I can't believe your granddaughter's
Right,
3.5 months old. Thank you. I'm going to see her in a week. But 3.5 months already. Where the heck did that go? It seems like last weekend when you sent me, you said, I'm a grandpa. Wow.
Yeah,
all right.
amazing.
See you guys next week as well for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live.